here's the thing, Chris, just to bring it home. When people move forward and use an infringing name, like I was just talking with someone yesterday, and like my heart breaks for them. Okay, like
Mhm.
just it's like the law doesn't protect you for not knowing, unfortunately, and they're being accused of trademark infringement. As a
Mm.
result, not they could lose their entire business. Now they've been operating for many years, and they could actually have to disgorge, meaning turn over all of the profits that they've made, because the allegation is you were using our trademark, and as a result of using our trademark, which is a well-known mark, you diverted traffic to you, and
Mm.
therefore the money you made should have been ours.
Welcome to Leading the Way podcast, where you'll learn neuroscience-backed ways to lead more effectively and have more fun at work with what you already have. Hey there, it's Chris, and welcome to Leading the Way. So excited you're here. Have an amazing episode for you. First, I want to welcome up my amazing guest, L.A. Perkins. L.A., thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Chris. It's a delight to be here with you today.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. LA, I'm going to tell people about you. You already know about you. I know about you, but they don't yet. So I want to make sure they know the kind of expertise they're going to enjoy on this podcast, and then we'll dive in. So, L.A. Perkins, she's a member of the Florida Bar since 1996. She must have started when she was 10. And she's the past president of the South Palm Beach County Law Association. She's also the founder and CEO of Perkins Law. It's a brand protection firm that's located in Boca Raton and serves clients nationwide. She founded that firm in 2013 after being a partner at two large law firms. Ellie is very passionate about guiding mission-driven, innovative business owners and their selection of their trademarks, helping them identify and protect their intellectual property assets and enforce their rights. She has 28 years experience doing this, representing individuals to Fortune 100 companies and federal and state courts all across the country, and representing clients in jury trials. She holds a very prestigious AV preeminent rating from Martingale Hubble Law Directory. It's a mouthful. She's the highest peer rating standard given to attorneys that are ranked at the highest level of professional excellence for their legal expertise, communication skills, ethical standards by their peers. She's also received recognition by super lawyers and intellectual property litigation by ALM Media as a woman leader in law, by Palm Beach Media Group as a top lawyer, among other recognitions. And to top it all off, she's the author of a #1 national bestseller book, Why Brand Protection Matters: How to Avoid Costly Mistakes and Increase the Value of Your Business. So we're incredibly delighted to have such a talented and brilliant person with us. Before I dive in, two things, or really one thing. For those listening, this is not legal advice. This is educational and informational. Please seek your personal attorney of your choice to get that information that's right for you. We want to help you out, but please, this is not legal advice. So we're just talking pre-show about something, and we'll probably dive in with that topic. So years ago in my undergrad, I had an amazing business law professor who was also a judge, and went into higher education because he said, Chris, once something got to me, I couldn't solve or do anything about it. And it was like the wrong time, he thought, to spend his energy. And so he wanted to spend the energy up front educating people about business law, about things you can do well in advance before you're in the courtroom or before you're in a situation where your rights are in jeopardy. I'm just curious, is that true in the trademark world as well? Is it better spent up front being educated about your assets and your IP, or do you just wait till something bad happens and hope for the best?
Oh, no, that's absolutely true when it comes to brand protection, Chris. And in fact, that's become a big mission of mine, is to spread the word. So business owners and entrepreneurs have very important information in selecting their brand names. And because starting from the front end, and ideally working with a lawyer that specializes in this area, can guide the business owner to make sure that the trademark that they want to operate under is in fact a trademark that they can protect
Mm.
nationally, and have exclusively as theirs for their brand identity. And as part of that analysis, it's to confirm that moving forward with either that name, that logo, that slogan, that they're not infringing on any other company's rights because the stakes are so very high for infringement.
Mm. Yeah, that makes total sense. And I'm just curious too, is there a stage? Because some people listening to this, they're pure startup mode. They haven't made their first 10,000 or even 100,000. I would imagine there's still important things you can do, even if your budget's tight. And then as you progress and you're successful, you take more action. Is that true, or is it really, do you want to front end all of this?
Honestly, I mean, look, I'm an entrepreneur myself. I
Right.
understand starting a business on a limited budget. So I get it. So best case scenario, it is really to, once you've come up with a name, a logo, or slogan, before
Hmm.
you start using it in your business, is to get confirmation at the minimum that you're not infringing on somebody else's rights. Now, there's different levels of confirmation you can obtain.
Hmm.
For example, just doing a straight search of that name or slogan, um, on the USPTO website. And in fact, actually on my firm's website, I have an easy way to search as well, which connects to the USPTO website, just to see if the identical name comes up, you know, is important. But it's more than that. It's to check similarities before someone gets started. Now, as I
Mm.
said, there's different levels of searching. So you can do a free search, and then there's a more comprehensive search, which I believe is a very important investment. Here's the thing, Chris. I mean, just to bring it home, when people move forward and use an infringing name, like I was just talking with someone yesterday, and like my heart breaks for them. Okay, like
Hmm.
just it's like the law doesn't protect you for not knowing, unfortunately. And they're being accused of trademark infringement. As a
Mm.
result, not they could lose their entire business. Now they've been operating for many, many years, and they could actually have to disgorge, meaning turn over all of the profits that they've made, because the allegation is, well, you were using our trademark, and as a result of using our trademark, which is a well-known mark, you diverted, traffic to you, and
Mm.
therefore the money you made should have been ours. Okay. Yes,
Wow.
they have to go through and prove that, but that's a huge price to pay. So not only would you have to turn over all your profits, you have to rebrand. I mean, that's essentially starting over.
Right. And the legal fees you'd have to, right, to go through all that process. And there's not, it's hard to put a dollar price tag on this, but that's a lot of agony too, that uncertainty. And I can't even imagine. I didn't realize it was a turn the profits over. So that really, that's
Yeah,
significant.
when it comes to brand protection, yes, there's a cost to doing it right.
Yeah.
There is, but I think it's an investment. I mean, that's really how I like it. Just like you would buy insurance.
Right. Right.
It's like you're buying an insurance policy, like to protect your risk, which
Mm.
in my view, when I've seen such horror stories, um, I think it's worth the risk, worth the investment to find a way to do it correctly. That's there's so many things that, if you try to do it alone, and many people do, Chris, by the way,
Yeah.
and sometimes they get it right, but oftentimes they don't. And
Right.
sometimes they can get the trademark application through, but often the statistics say that they have a better shot at being able to be successful in getting federal trademark protection when they work with a lawyer.
Oh yeah,
They
it
do.
makes total sense. It's just like, picking, for me at least, picking a contractor that's done flooring a million times versus me learning to do it. Nothing against DIY, but that pro is going to come in and nail it and know things that I don't and issues I don't. And
Yes,
so I don't want to, resemble it too quickly. It's very different legal, but it's the same thing. You've got
it
lots of
is the same
expertise.
thing.
Yeah,
I agree with you. And I'm an advocate. We're, as business owners, we want to, or executives, we want to focus on our business,
right.
right?
Right.
And anyway, it's just so important. I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. In the beginning chapters of your book, and so I don't remember the exact ones, but on the more positive side, because we talked a little bit of like the negative, protecting yourself in these bad situations. Um, you talk about how these assets, intellectual property assets, brand assets, become more valuable or a big percentage of the value of the company over years. And while early
Yes.
entrepreneurs maybe don't think about this, you may have an exit 10, 20, 30 years from now where you want to sell the thing and move on to something else, or even earlier. How does brand protection, IP protection help that value of the company when the time comes for that sort of M&A? Is there something there that matters?
Oh, 100%, 100%. And it's one of the reasons to move forward with protecting. As you said, Chris, it does increase the value of your business. Intellectual property, which is comprised of trademarks, copyrights, patents, and trade secrets, all of those together are intangible assets. And they're really balance sheet items. They increase the value of the business. And in my book, I've got a great visual which talks about how from 1975 to 2020, it's been exponential in the valuation of the S&P 500 in terms of the percentage of the value of the company that's attributable to intangible assets, which IP composes intangible assets. And it's gone from, I don't recall the bottom number, to 90% of the value of the business in 2020. And of
Wow.
course, technology and all those things are a big part of the reason for that. But I can share a brief story. I had a client that protected her, did her brand protection, and not only did she protect it with a registered trademark, she policed her mark because that's another thing that's really important. You can't just
Mm,
say, "Oh, I got a trademark," and you have to make sure if somebody else is using something similar, that you stop them
mm.
from doing that. And she did all of that. And when it came time to sell her business, she got an offer, and then she came to me and she said, this is what's going on. Like, how can we, approach this? And I said, you need to let them know everything that you did, like with respect to protecting your trademarks. And
Mm.
she ended up selling that company for 900% more than was
Wow.
originally offered.
Wow. Wow. That's significant. And I'm curious too, you mentioned it's a balance sheet item, which is incredibly interesting because that means it's an asset. And when you're getting financing and other sorts of things, you've got this asset that has a dollar financial value. Is it, forgive my naivete, and I think a lot of listeners this way too. Would this an example would be, let's say you're Coke or Pepsi and your logo assets, could they potentially have a balance sheet line item? Is it something like that, or is it different?
Yes, there are professionals that actually value intellectual property. So yes, each trademark has a value
Mm,
attributable to it. I mean, can you imagine if Coca-Cola lost Coca-Cola? I mean, it would be nothing.
right. Right. Yeah, it's not to disparage Coca-Cola, but it's,
Right?
sugar
No, no, no,
water,
exactly. No,
right?
not at all. I love Coca-Cola.
Right. That's interesting. That's interesting. Well, shifting gears here a little bit, in this exciting and crazy world of AI and all the generative AI, specifically ChatGPT and what have you, how does that shape intellectual property? Say I type something into ChatGPT and it kicks something out, and maybe I tweak it a little bit, and it's a published work. Does ChatGPT as a company have any ownership of that? Because their tooling was part of the creation of that. Sorry for the tricky question, but I'm curious how that plays.
Yeah, no, and I'm sure a lot of people, wonder about that. So basically, and the AI software platforms, the law is really, really evolving in this area very quickly. I mean, as we know, it's changing our lives. Um, really, when you talk about giving a prompt to ChatGPT and getting, let's say, I don't know, a paragraph or a book or that is according to the Copyright Office, because we're talking about copyright generally
Hmm.
when we're talking about works produced by ChatGPT. Um, it's not copyrightable. I mean, generally speaking. Now, I suspect there will be nuances as the
Sure.
law evolves, and maybe we'll get to a point where it's analyzed, like depending on the number of prompts you put in and how much
Right.
input the person um, puts into the effort to get the information. I can imagine a time down the road where that may play a part, but
Mm.
currently that's not something you can claim exclusive use to, because it came from information that wasn't yours.
It's almost like public domain, sort of. I mean, it's
There's a
yeah, that
lot of lawsuits right now, Chris,
I bet.
against the AI platforms, and I think there will be a way that this will work, and it will most likely involve licensing fees and things of that nature.
It totally makes sense, and it reminds me of the early internet days with search engines. There was all this hubbub about, the spiders could grab everything, and they shows up in search, and not everyone wanted that. um, it's a similar technical pattern on all the GPT stuff. It's found everything it can find, and just because it's out there doesn't mean that people wanted it found and used in a GPT engine. So it'll be
Yeah,
interesting.
a side note, I had a very interesting situation with ChatGPT. When people call my office, they ask, "How did you come to me?" And a person called and said, "ChatGPT recommended you." And I
Sweet.
thought, "Whoa, I made it to ChatGPT. That's
Thank
super
you.
cool."
It's the best thing ever. That's awesome. I haven't never heard of that. That's amazing. That's really cool. Um, Curious for folks that are they don't know how to prepare for with a lawyer, right? A lot of the fears that come up are money, quite honestly, right? And I would certainly argue that it's worth the value, and that expertise is worth a lot. There's no argument there, but it's a larger expense sometimes at first. And so one way I think folks can come to that and leverage that and use that investment is be prepared, right? As they engage. Are there things you recommend folks do to be prepared in their first conversations with, a professional like yourself, or things they can do to really set you up for a win in your job of protecting them?
Well, honestly, I think it's by educating yourself a little bit before you have that initial conversation. So you're
Okay.
not, so you come to that conversation with at least some background knowledge, and reading a book like the one that I published, I think does accomplish that. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying there aren't other books out there that can do that, but certainly having some background information, and then which will aid you in having questions, as
Mm,
opposed to, where the lawyer, which is fine, having to draw it out of you and there being a little bit more confusion. But generally speaking, Chris, an IP lawyer would be able to guide someone. So if they didn't want to, read a book or do any work, or, but to answer your question, I think like reading something, or gathering information that gives them just a baseline of knowledge, like what they should be thinking of, like what can be trademarked, what can be copyrighted, what can
right.
I patent, and and trade secrets, what are they? Like, we're talking, and it's important to know, what's the difference. And I know a lot of people use the words interchangeably, so as well. So I think just by having, and they're all very different, is my point. And
Right.
there's different
Absolutely.
rules and laws that apply.
Right. And different meanings around the words, right? And legalese, a word means something very different than colloquially we say a word, right? There's
Yeah,
statutes and things around a word. Even like shall
100%.
and will and those sorts of things. Like, oh, okay, that has a distinct meaning and it matters.
Words
Um,
matter, absolutely. All the details, particularly when it comes to law, right? All matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm curious, again, this is not legal advice to anyone out there listening, but are there common mistakes you see business owners? Are there any kind of patterns you see of folks and super high level ways that they can avoid those mistakes?
Absolutely. There's some very basic things that I see come up over and over, which are misconceptions. And one is when somebody will call me and say, I want to sue for trademark infringement. I registered my company name with the Secretary of State in the state where I live. So I own the rights to the name. Well, registering a company name with the Secretary of State does not provide exclusive trademark rights nationally.
Mm,
It basically provides you a name to operate under. It doesn't even, you still could be infringing by operating under that name, even though you could register it in the Secretary of State, you still could be infringing.
wow.
So, that's one. And I also see with people domain names
Right.
that they think that they got the domain name, and as a result, they've got exclusive rights to it. Now, it's great to have a domain name that works for you. I mean, I'm not
Sure.
minimizing that, but it doesn't give you exclusive rights at all. Um, some other
Interesting.
things that come to mind immediately, which I see, which ends up being a big mistake, is not doing that comprehensive trademark search. As a
Mm,
lawyer, I always recommend it because it's the way to, um, as I say, minimize the risk going forward. And I do a lot of comprehensive trademark searches, but once in a while, I come across a client that, no, just do what we call a knockout search, which is just checking the USPTO records. And, I'll always say, I can't guarantee there's nothing out there. And we get something that's called an office act. We file the trademark application, and then an examiner is assigned, and they issue what's called an office action that says, no, we've got a problem because this is confusingly similar to another mark. And then they're upset.
mm,
Well, you know, that's likely something that would have come up in our search. And then maybe, by doing that, it gives a business owner an opportunity to assess the risk, figure
right.
out if there should be any pivots going forward. It's
Right.
just like
And make an
intelligence.
educated
It's you.
choice, right? Instead of a surprise, which, and not a pleasant surprise later.
No,
Makes a
no.
lot of sense.
And sometimes an office action isn't necessarily it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to get the trademark. So there are
Hmm.
various ways to address office actions to move forward. So I don't want to leave any of your listeners with the thought that you get an office action, you're totally stopped, because that's
Right.
not the case.
No, it's just sounds like it's a slight shift, and you can make some choices to set your up for a win. Eh, Is this true for so a lot of folks listening are professional coaches and consultants? True for them as well, because there's a lot of words used quite often, right? Transformational, those sorts of words in the name of coaching service-based companies. Are they able to trademark components of their service or their brand, or is that
A
challenging
hundred,
to do?
yes, they are. But to your point, Chris, it's like, what is trademarkable? There's like a continuum, like in terms of, if it's a generic word,
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to trademark it. And it's interesting because there's some words that turned out that were once um, trademarks, but because they weren't policed, they became generic and they lost their trademark rights. And a few of, like, just to Kleenex, elevator, yeah, I mean, excuse me, escalator. Those are words that once were brand names, but
Right.
they lost their trademark rights. Okay, so
Wow.
generic is the lowest. You can't protect generic words. I mean, I couldn't say table because how could I have exclusive rights to use the word table? It just wouldn't make
Right.
sense. Okay. The next is descriptive. And this is, I'm talking about the continuum of weak to strong marks, right?
Okay.
So you've got descriptive, and then you've got which are, give somebody an idea of the type of business that it is.
Mm,
And not to get too technical, when it comes to descriptive marks, there's two types of registers with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. There's one called the supplemental register and the principal register.
Okay.
Oftentimes, descriptive marks will end up on the supplemental register, which gives them rights, and it's good, but it's not as good as the principal register. That's like the short story there.
Okay.
And so we've got the suggestive, and then we go into the arbitrary and fanciful.
Okay. So LA, tell me, can you give me an example of suggestive and what that means?
Yeah, a suggestive mark is a mark where it doesn't exactly say what it is, but it's suggested. So, a good example of a suggestive mark is copper tone. You know, the suntan lotion.
Right.
It suggests that it gives you that copper, nice, warm brown. When you use it to sunbathe. So
Right.
copper tone is a really great example of a suggestive mark.
Got it. Okay. Thanks so much.
So arbitrary is where you take a word like apple for computers. You're taking
Mm,
a word that we know, but you're applying it to something that's not that, right? And fanciful is where it's made up. It's a made up word that is a strong mark. But even with made up words, I just want to say, because I've seen this happen, um, it's still important to do trademark searches, full ones, because your
sure.
made up word could have a similarity to another registered trademark, for example, that you're not even aware of.
Right. Right. As you're saying that, I could totally imagine maybe a science fiction movie property, right? Use that same word to define a character or a location or something like that. I don't know if that'd be protected or not, but I could easily see overlap. You think you have something new and unique, and you probably don't
Well,
without
you may
checking.
not, you may, but to your point, with a lot of coaches, as your listeners, and they're working with business owners, it's like the gold standard to have a name that you're operating under that is exclusively yours.
Yeah,
So for example, let's say a coach, I don't know, had a name, but the word transformation was in it, and the first part of the mark was distinct, or
sure.
distinct. That is something that possibly they could obtain together, um, but they won't be allowed the transformation word on its own.
Got it. That totally makes sense. That's so helpful. Thank you. I'm curious, folks listening, realizing like, I've got some stuff I need to think about here. You mentioned educating themselves. Certainly, your book is available on Amazon. We'll have that in the show notes for folks to check out. It's a great book. I've read it, and it certainly helped me understand things quickly. So great job in making that so easy to read and consumable, because I think a lot of us are intimidated by legal things, just like they're intimidated by engineering things in my world. And it's good to break. Thank you for breaking those down so people can understand it. Um, for folks that are excited about this and maybe want to engage with you, what are the best ways they can do that, LA?
Well, would be to call my office.
Okay,
I'm happy to give the number now, which is 561-467-4001. Also, they can engage through connecting on my website and sending a contact form that will get to us, so we could get back and schedule a time to talk.
excellent, excellent. Well, thank you so much for that. There's so many little snippets here that probably could save companies tens of thousands, maybe millions, depending on how things go. And so important to front end this where you can, as you can. Before we close out, LA, I always love to ask all of my amazing guests, what's something you're thankful for today?
Oh, wow. I'm thankful. I'm truly thankful for the opportunity to have this conversation with you, Chris.
Well, that's
Really,
very
thank you.
kind of you. Likewise, likewise. You're incredibly talented. Folks don't realize how lucky they are to hear you speak. And, I've seen you step in with peers. We've been in some different business associations, things together, and just your level of integrity and level of service is great. You don't always see that in the professional world, legal and otherwise. So, thank you for showing up in that way and really caring and championing. I don't know your clients, but I can only imagine based on your interactions, that's how you show up. So thank you for being that way in the world.
Thank you for that acknowledgement. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Now, friends, those of you listening, the best thing you can do is you probably know someone that this could serve. Share this with them. Yes, I'd love your likes and subscribes and all those things to make the algorithm show this to other people. But most importantly, you probably have a friend that's dealing with this in business or might be, or you want to make sure they are. And one of the most loving things you can do is just forward this and they can quickly listen to it and go, yeah, this is something I need to worry about. No, it doesn't fit for me right now, but thank you. So be sure to do that in this giving season and keep leading the way. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thank you for listening to Leading the Way podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you won't miss other great episodes like this one. And if you're ready for more in your workplace, be sure to go to aintent.com. You'll find lots of free tools, assessments, and ways to engage directly with us to get your own epic results. We'll see you there.